Respected speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sindhleen Kasser, and on behalf of the Institute of Regional Studies and Center for Policy Research, I extend to you all a very warm welcome to today's event. Today's roundtable discussion centers on Pakistan-India relations, particularly the challenges and complexities of the current impasse and a possible way forward. We'll begin today's proceedings with a recitation of a few verses from the Holy Quran.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful.
إنا أعطيناك الكوثر.
Indeed, we have granted you, O Muhammad, Al-Kawthar.
فصل لربك وانحر.
So pray to your Lord and sacrifice to Him alone.
إن شانئك هو الأبتر.
Indeed, your enemy is the one cut off.
Jazakallah. Now I would like to invite Ambassador Johar Salim, President of the Institute of Regional Studies, for his welcome remarks and to set the stage for today's deliberations.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. Esteemed panelists, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure and a privilege to welcome you all here today to this joint endeavor that IRS and BNU are doing together. This brainstorming of some brilliant minds is on a subject that is as intricate and intractable that the scholars and practitioners of international relations would have confronted ever. But I'm confident that this amazing array of minds that we have today will be able to come up with ideas that our policymakers can draw upon. Pakistan-India relations represent an enduring rivalry, marked by great hostility and mistrust. This rivalry has been rooted deep in our history and is a sad saga of an existentialist threat that our country faced since its very inception from a much bigger neighbor with seemingly hegemonic attitude. It was in response to this very mindset that Pakistan became what international relation theorists would call a national security state, or a state where all aspects of political, economic, intellectual, and social life are dominated by considerations of national defense. I recall a brainstorming session that I was part of many years ago. The year was 2018. A new government in Pakistan had taken over, and many of the envoys abroad had been invited to deliberate upon some policy guidelines for the new government. And Pakistan-India relations was a very important part of that. It was there that I had suggested to the foreign minister and other dignitaries that was present that Pakistan need to graduate from being a security state. Because as long as we remain a security state, we cannot be an emerging economy. That has been our much touted and much focused objective over the years. And why? Because these two concepts are mutually exclusive. Now, history provides us many examples where countries have transformed or graduated from being security states. China is a great example. Under Deng Xiaoping, China changed its course entirely and very successfully. I can't go into the details of that, but I'm sure you all know how Deng came up with this peace in the neighborhood policy and froze the conflicts that China was involved in and just focused on economic development. And it worked wonders. On the other hand, we also have examples of countries which could not do that and ended up having bigger challenges than the challenge that had forced them to become a security state in the first place. Soviet Union is a prime example of that. In the subsequent years, we did witness an articulation of a security policy that ostensibly focused on economics, geoeconomics, and not geopolitics. We have Dr. Moeed Yusuf amongst us, who was the prime enunciator of that security policy. But the fact remains that in many ways, we remain within the bounds of what many would call a security state. Much has changed since then in the world around us. India has become the 5th largest economy in the world. It has foreign reserves of over $600 billion. Its exports are now over $650 billion. Bangladesh and many other countries in our own region have also demonstrated a very high rate of growth. In comparison, we have tottered from one economic crisis to another. Our foreign reserves today are less than $10 billion. We've been forced to borrow from IMF or many of our friends again and again. As a GDP, from being in the 20s, we have fallen to 42 now in the world rankings. Now, some would say here that the prime security threat or challenge that Pakistan has faced in recent decades has been more from its western borders or non-state actors than its eastern border. That may have some merit to it, but the fact remains that the challenges that we've faced on the western border or from the non-state actors, many of those challenges have actually emanated from policies that were spurred in response to the threat that we faced from India. And these threats and challenges have always been intertwined. And now, when India has a policy articulated by Ajit Doval as defensive offense, you know how the challenge from India continues to be there in terms of the security dimension. So where do we stand today in terms of relations with India? And where do we go from here? The future of our relations does not have to mirror the past. What do we see in the past? The wars of 1948, 65, 71, Kargil conflict of 99, military standoff of 2002, 2003, more recently, the Indian airstrikes along the LOC in 2019, to which Pakistan responded in an equal measure. But these endless conflicts have been interspersed by some peace efforts over the years. In 1960, we had the Indus Water Treaty. In the 70s, we had Simla Accord. In 97, we envisioned a composite dialogue which was instituted in 2003. In 1998, there was signing of Lahore Declaration. Then there was Agra Summit of 2001. And a ceasefire agreement or understanding was reached in November 2003, which is held to this date, more or less. The composite dialogue that was instituted in 2003, 2004 could have been a substantial step forward because it included multiple areas of challenges and possible cooperation. But unfortunately, that was halted in November 2008. Modi's ascent to power has further complicated the prospect of a normal neighborly relationship. His actions, particularly the abolishing of the special status of the OJK through abrogation of Articles 370 and Article 35A in August 2019, an introduction of a new domicile law in March 2020 to make Indians eligible to become permanent residents of IRJK in an attempt to change the demographics of a disputed territory. All these actions have compounded the problem. In simple terms, Modi has unilaterally tried for an internal solution of the dispute. And the fact is that there has been a minimal international reaction to that, despite our downgrading diplomatic relations with India, despite our raising the voice internationally as much as we could. What we see now is that based on that very mild international reaction and India's increasing importance in the global politics, Modi has adopted even a more arrogant attitude and posture than before, and depicts that India does not need to engage with Pakistan. That notwithstanding, there seems to be a sense of some anticipation following the elections in both countries. The exchange of congratulatory messages between the two prime ministers was positive but lukewarm. The key question now is, what can we expect from India during Modi's third term with a reduced majority? And what can we do in terms of our policy response or any possible policy initiatives? With this backdrop, I look forward to hearing from this assembly of experts that can analyze all the different dimensions of relations with India and suggest a way forward. And that is exactly the reason that we have not just gathered here some of the most eminent diplomats that Pakistan ever had, but also security experts, economists, heads of think tanks, opinion makers, so that all the various aspects of this equation could be discussed and debated. I look forward to a very productive, interactive session today, and I'm confident that we would be able to come up with ideas that the policymakers would find interesting and useful. I thank you all.
Thank you, sir. I now invite Ambassador Mansoor Ahmed Khan, Director of the Center for Policy Research, for his opening remarks and to elaborate on today's theme.
Thank you very much. I think I'll try to make my remarks from here in order to save time and to start the proceedings as quickly as possible. We also, on behalf of the BNU, extremely grateful to esteemed panelists, esteemed guests who have come here for this important roundtable. We thank BNU is grateful to the IRS for this collaboration, for organizing this event collectively on an important theme of Pakistan's relations with India. Since my retirement, I settled in Lahore, which is my hometown, and I am now part of Beacon House National University, which is first not-for-profit liberal arts university in Lahore, in the country. Since January 2024, I am part of that university, and I want to just briefly tell you that what importance is the university is attaching to the research. We are trying to strengthen the research component in BNU's work, policy research in particular, and trying to deepen linkages between academics and research so that the graduates and students who come out of the Beacon House National University are more empowered and more skilled professionals in the coming years. The themes which we are dealing in our policy research at the Beacon House Center for Policy Research include national security, foreign policy, economy, governance, public policy, and the interlinkages between them. We are currently working on a number of projects, such as strengthening of Pakistan-US relations. We have established a China Studies Chair at the university. We are working on, as today's roundtable indicates, on having some research on India-Pakistan relations, how to melt the ice, economy, connectivity, climate change, energy, water resources are some other themes which are part of the BNU's research work. BCPR, BNU's think tank, is engaged in collaborations, institutional collaborations with think tanks inside Pakistan and international think tanks, including in the United States, UK, EU, China, and other countries. Now, coming to today's meeting, while Ambassador Johar Salim has explained given a broader picture of what has been happening in Pakistan-India relations, I will be laying down some specific questions which we ask our panelists to respond to with regard to what should be the way forward on Pakistan-India relations. Now, Pakistan and India have no engagement for past many years. All of us know that. In past 2-3 years, the discourse in Pakistan indicates that there is some willingness to find a way forward. In India, if our engagement with the Indian think tanks is any indication, there is no change so far which is seen in Indian policy, and it continues to adhere to a policy of no talks with Pakistan. But this year, elections were held in both Pakistan, earlier in Pakistan, and then in India. And there are new governments. So I think it is important to assess if there is a space for moving forward and what should be done by Pakistan in order to move forward. Irrespective of India's position, what we intend to analyze at this roundtable is what should be Pakistan's stance following elections in both countries. Our request to the panelists and participants is to respond to some key questions, such as whether Pakistan should have engagement with India. It is a philosophical question, conceptual question. If yes, if no, how to deal with the consequences if India is as a big neighbor, as a major regional and global country. If we have no engagement with India, what are the consequences? What are the setbacks for us? So we have to take into account if we don't want an engagement with India, or if an engagement with India is not possible. And if yes, what are the options on the way forward? Can we offer a dialogue to India? Is it feasible, doable? Is a track 2 possible? Is a back channel engagement possible? What are the possible areas of convergence? And that is the most tricky area. One of the areas that comes to our mind could be trade, transit, regional connectivity, Afghanistan, connectivity between or economic integration between Arab world, West Asia, Central Asia, and South Asia. Is it doable? How bilateral economic trade and economic interaction can be presented as an incentive. Is it possible? I remember in 2014, Minister Khurram Dastagir was there in India when Ambassador Salman Bashir was High Commissioner to India, and we were on the verge of concluding NDMA, non-discriminatory market access. So can we expect going back to that kind of trajectory? If not now, what is our view about bilateral trade with India? Bilateral trade is only currently taking place through third countries. What is the potential for economic exchanges with bordering provinces like Punjab to Punjab, Rajasthan and Sindh? Karachi is the port nearest to many Indian towns. So is there a potential, is there a space, is there a scope for exploring that kind of cooperation? Would Indians be willing to do that? Maybe some of the Indian provinces or provincial stakeholders are in support of that kind of interaction. And then again, the think tank level engagement reveals that it will be the most difficult area will be political issues such as Jammu and Kashmir, terrorism from the Indian point of view. And recently we have seen the Indian discourse is talking about some kind of instability in Jammu region, which they believe is being propelled by Pakistan. So these kind of questions, we want that today's roundtable, where we have former foreign secretaries, we have former politicians, ministers who have been part of India-Pakistan discourse, we have former ambassadors and high commissioners who have served in India, we have former generals, we have strategic experts, think tank heads. So I think we should, after this roundtable, we believe that we should have some clarity with regard to at least our position on the way forward on Pakistan-India relations. And with this, I would end my opening remarks here. And thank you very much once again for being present at this meeting.
Thank you, sir. Now I will hand it over to Dr. Naeed Yusuf, Vice Chancellor of the Beacon House National University and former National Security Advisor, to moderate the first session.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you very much. First of all, thank you, Joe Saab, again, and to the IRS for partnering on this. As I see it, we have only one challenge today, and that is not to fix the India-Pakistan relationship, but time. It's Friday, there's Juma, we are late, We have a lot of people who will make interventions. So I apologize to everybody in advance, but I would request all of you to please make it as brief as possible. I'm told there is going to be a timer on the screen for everybody. Disregard it, speak half the time, please. But on a serious note, I think there are three basic baskets to consider. The political, obviously, Kashmir being, the principal issue. Terrorism, I would just add, Mansoor Sahib, terrorism, what they say is one thing, but what they are doing here and have been doing here is the other side of the coin. Then there's the economic space and the social space, then, the people to people. So my request to all the panelists would be to please focus on the way forward and be as specific as you can on what can or cannot happen. If your view is nothing can happen, that's fine too, but just as specifically as you can speak to that, but time is a real constraint today. We'll begin with two keynote speeches. I call them remarks. Senator Mushaid Hussain Syed Saab, former minister, requires no introduction, has just received two unprecedented awards in China. One is the first Silk Road Global News Award, and the second one is the 5 Principles of Peaceful Coexistence Award. And nobody ever has received these two before. I was just telling him that nothing comes without a consequence. So he can now say goodbye to his US visa, but that's okay. So thank you for being here. And then Khurram Dastagir Saab, who has been a minister, again needs no introduction, has been a member of the National Assembly multiple times. And the best thing in his life is that he's a free man right now. So he can think and enjoy before he goes back into the constraints of the National Assembly soon, we hope. The other thing I want to mention about him is not many of his accolades, but he is probably the most vociferous reader of the most difficult books I have ever come across. And I remember regularly carrying books back from the US for him. Even those that I couldn't get through. So we have two, keynote speakers, illustrious in their own rights. Muchad sir, why don't we start with you and then we'll go over to Khurram sir.